Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 favorite American heavy metal bands of all time. For those of you in the States, hope you all had a great July 4th, and I figured, even though it's July 5th, why not celebrate the holiday together here? Thought I'd do something fun and talk about some of my favorite American metal bands. So, first off, this is just a list of my personal favorite American heavy metal bands, so some bands may or may not have had a greater impact on the American metal scene than others, and while I am taking that into account here, entries on this list and the order in which they're ranked lean pretty much heavily towards my personal preferences more than anything else. And secondly, here, I won't be including any rock groups on this list like Aerosmith, Van Halen, Guns N' Roses, Foo Fighters, The Ramones, etc. Even though I do love all of those bands, I wouldn't necessarily consider them to be metal, and who knows, if this video does well and you guys enjoy it, maybe I'll do a part 2 for American rock bands only. So that said, focusing on metal here today on July 5th, doing a holiday special for July 4th. Let's get started here with my number 10. Let's get things started here with my number 10. I'm going to go with Rage Against the Machine, one of those outspoken bands of the 90s. They did an incredible job of combining metal with rap, also with influences here of punk rock and funk music as well. So they only have 4 albums in their catalog, but every one of them is fantastic, in my opinion. All killer, no filler in their catalog, as far as I'm concerned. Zach De La Rocha on lead vocals has such a unique voice and just so perfect for the band. So later on with the Audio Slave stuff and Chris Cornell doing some of this, doing some of the Rage Against the Machine material live, I just never thought that clicked with me. Probably because Zach De La Rocha's voice and his delivery on those songs are just totally second to none and really hard to duplicate. So I really wish that they would make another studio record. Although Tom Morello has been pretty adamant that there are no plans currently for them to make new music after the reunion as of 2021, so I guess that could change, but right now it doesn't seem like we're going to get another studio album from Rage Against the Machine for a while, but that's okay. We have their 90s output to hold us over. Great stuff in every album they ever released. Awesome lyrics, great delivery by Zach De La Rocha, and just killer playing by the band. Love Brad Wilk's drumming as well. Great stuff. Next at number 9, let's go with the Misfits, and nobody's accusing the Misfits of being, the best musicians of all time, but their music is just so much fun to listen to. It's hard-hitting, impactful, and rapid fire. They really did help to put horror punk on the map and showed a much heavier side of, punk rock, formed by Glenn Danzig in Lodi, New Jersey. This album right here, Earth AD Wolf's Blood, is an absolute cornerstone, essential of hardcore punk, right? The Misfits definitely did leave a legacy behind. It made such an impact when they were first starting out, but over the years, they may have sold more t-shirts than records, but have built up a legacy that, has allowed their music to age really well, and are now playing arenas, right, reuniting the classic lineup, and I'm super excited because I'm getting to see the Misfits live later this month. Cannot wait. They've always been a fantastic live band, so to have the opportunity to see the Misfits live and Danzig live for the first time as well is going to be a really great show. So that said, coming in at number 9 here, I'm going to go with the hardcore punk legends, the Misfits. Following that up here with my number 8, let's go with Slipknot, a band that first caught people's attention when they were part of the Ozfest tour in 1999. Slipknot would go on to become one of the most important new metal acts of all time, but also one of the biggest American metal acts still touring to this day. They've definitely undergone a lot of lineup changes over the years, and have recently experimented as well with their sound on their most recent album, The End So Far, which personally I enjoyed. I love it when bands experiment a little bit in the studio, but they've remained standard bearers in heavy metal today, and one of those unique metal acts that have influenced so many new up-and-coming bands, but when they're done will truly never be replaced. So that said, coming in at my number 8, let's go with Slipknot. Another unique band that could never be duplicated in, say, 10,000 years are Tool, American progressive metal legends who only have released 5 albums in their career, which I talked about more in my 5 album runs video a few days ago on the channel here, so I definitely want to check that video out. But basically their catalog is all killer, no filler. It's quality over quantity, and there is nothing bad in the Tool catalog, in my opinion. Every single album is an absolute banger. Their creativity and outstanding musicianship over the years have made them one of the most untouchable progressive metal bands of all time, with only 5 records to their name across 3 decades. That just kind of speaks volumes to how strong their material is and how well it's held up over the years as well. So coming in at number 7, let's go with the great Tool. Number 6, I'm going to go with the solo career of Ronnie James Dio. After fronting, some great non-American metal bands like Rainbow and Black Sabbath, Dio launched into one of the greatest solo careers in heavy metal history and proved he could thrive on his own, making great, if not better, material as a solo artist than with his previous band, so that's probably up for debate. Ronnie had one of the most powerful voices in metal history, which is definitely not up for debate, and could seemingly make anything work, except for that one industrial thing on Angry Machines. But aside from that, he's one of those artists that I wish I could have seen live, but unfortunately never had the opportunity opportunity to before his passing in 2010, but no denying he's one of the all-time best, and, when it comes to some of the best solo careers in heavy metal, he has to be at the top of that list. Moving into the top 5 now with the mighty Slayer. They're one of the big 4 of thrash metal, and were, one band of the big 4 that I think stayed the closest to their original sound throughout their entire careers. Formed in California in 1981, their fast-paced, aggressive style was pretty much unheard of at the time, and they went from playing covers of great new wave of British heavy metal bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden to turning out some of the greatest thrash metal albums of all time, including classics in their catalog like Rain and Blood, South of Heaven, Seasons in the Abyss, and more. I think it's safe to say that death metal, as we know and love it today, would not exist without the visionary mind of Chuck Schuldiner. So, that said, coming in at number 4 here, I'm going to go with Death. Their catalog improved constantly as the band grew stronger with every release, as did Schuldiner's songwriting style and the group's evolution into more of a technical death metal band, and they were such a pioneering force in the creation of death metal that I think it's safe to say that every death metal band these days has at least copied a thing or two from Chuck Schuldiner and Death. So for that, my number 4 here on the list, have to go with the groundbreaking, revolutionary Death. Fantastic band, great death metal legends, and Chuck Schuldiner, another musician who passed away way too soon, but had an incredible mind for music. My top 3 are all bands that are in my top 5 favorite bands of all time here. So again, this list just a personal preference thing. Wanted to do a fun countdown. So that said, coming in at number 3 here, we have W.A.S.P. Now, if you follow my channel, you know how much I love W.A.S.P. Fronted by Blackie Lawless, somebody who I think is wickedly underrated throughout their entire careers. W.A.S.P. were so overlooked as far as I'm concerned, but from the Sunset Strip, probably not the first name that come to mind when you think of bands that came from that same scene. But W.A.S.P. came up in the hair metal crowd, but really never fit in a particular space, which I talk about a lot over the years, kind of walking that line between hair metal and heavy metal, right? Really not having the right kind of a look to be a traditional heavy metal band, but having the sound that really did make them contrary to a lot of the hair metal acts at the time. So very much a unique and different band. Never really could find their footing in the mainstream. W.A.S.P. maybe shot themselves in the foot one too many times with their controversial approach, but nevertheless, in my opinion, one of the all-time best, and I just find every one of their albums to be an absolute banger. So much fun to listen to, and Blackie Lawless has a fantastic voice as well. They've endured a lot of lineup changes over the years, but the one constant is Blackie on every record, who absolutely kills it here. So great work in the W.A.S.P. catalog by Blackie Lawless and W.A.S.P. My number 3 here on the list as we start in the top 3. Coming in at number 2, it's my third favorite band of all time, and a group that, if you follow my channel, you know that I consider to be a metal act, even though maybe it's up for debate by some people, but nonetheless, coming in at number 2 here, we have Alice in Chains. Coming up in the Seattle scene, right, they were lumped in with the grunge movement of the time, and I think it's good in a sense that kind of allowed them to, put the spotlight on Alice in Chains, along with, bands like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, all riding that wave of momentum that, propelled the Seattle scene into the mainstream due to the release of Nevermind by Nirvana. But I've always considered Alice in Chains to be more on the metal side of grunge than anything else. Nonetheless, an incredible band here. Never made a bad album as far as I'm concerned. Love the stuff with Lane Staley on lead vocals, one of my all-time favorite singers, and also really enjoy the stuff they've done more recently with Will Duvall on lead vocals after Lane's passing. I think it's all great. And Jerry Cantrell, one of the best riff writers in metal history, fantastic vocalist on his own. So killer stuff in the Alice in Chains catalog, some epic lyrics throughout their entire discography. Love this band to death. Again, they're my third favorite band of all time. So coming up on this list of the best American metal bands, they're going to be number 2 here. Gotta go with Alice in Chains. Before I get to my number 1 here, I do have a handful of honorable mentions, so those go out to Typo Negative, Twisted Sister, you have Megadeth, Pantera, and Mastodon, all fantastic American metal bands, but I can only fit 10 on the list here today. Coming in at number 1, I might get a little bit of heat for this, but, this is just, again, my personal preference, and they are my second favorite band of all time. If you follow my channel, you probably know who I'm talking about. It's got to be Metallica here at number 1. In my opinion, the best American metal band of all time. They were one of those bands that were really a gateway band for me, right? I was into Iron Maiden. That was my first band that I really loved in heavy metal, and then, when I listened to Metallica, that kind of opened and expanded my horizons to thrash metal and everything that kind of led from that. But Metallica, in my opinion, still the best of the big 4 of thrash metal. They definitely strayed from that thrash sound over the years, and maybe they're back to a more thrashy sound now, even though I wouldn't consider it to be 100% thrash. But I truly don't believe they have a bad album in their catalog. There are definitely some that are stronger than others. There's no denying that, but I do generally really enjoy every era of the band, and I find, them to be one of those musically sound and comfortable bands out there, very much comfortable in their sound, especially now. They've really settled into a great rhythm and groove with their last few albums, which I really enjoy, including 72 Seasons, released earlier this year. So far, one of my favorite releases of 2023. If you want to hear more of my favorites from this year, definitely go check out that video I did, favorite album of the year so far. I did that a couple of weeks ago here on the channel, so that's out there if you want to check it out. But Really love Metallica, again, my second favorite band of all time, one of the first metal bands I ever got into after getting into, Iron Maiden and AC/DC. They were there and kind of expanded my horizons, like I said. So for me, Metallica have to be number one when it comes to some of the best American metal bands on this list. So that wraps up this countdown here of the 10 best American metal bands, just my personal preference, which should be visible right over here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you never miss a new upload. Be sure to share this video around on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. It's greatly appreciated. And please let me know down in the comment section below what are some of your favorite American metal bands of all time. I want to hear from you. Let me know all that good stuff in the comments. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.